Okay, so let's do a little drawing activity. And so remember, during endochondral ossification, so endo meaning within, chondral meaning cartilage, ossification. So os meaning bone, cation. So ossification or any ification means becoming. So what we have here, I'm going to draw it in this light blue over here. Remember, you start off with this basic. Let's make this thicker. So you start out with that kind of like that very rudimentary bone over here. But it's not actually bone tissue here, it's just a cartilage scaffold made of hyaline cartilage. Now what happened during that first step? Well, it's cartilage, but how do you get the calcium? How do you get the phosphate? How do you get those cells? And notice in the previous video, you also have to deliver those osteoblasts that help to build new bone. So what we have are blood vessels. So blood vessels, let's make this a little brighter red. So blood vessels are going to carry calcium. So they're going to, and other minerals as well. So you have all this calcium being carried by blood vessels. So when a bone is first developing, what actually happens is that these blood vessels are superficial. They're not in the bone yet. So because they're carrying all these calcium salts to the bone, it's actually going to form bone on the very outside first. Now this is a cross section of it. If we actually looked at it in 3D, it would actually look something like this. So it would actually have like a little tube of bone going around it, and that's what we call a bone collar. Because again, it's starting out superficial. So that's what the initial step is. But what happened during that bone formation? So these blood vessels, they actually start to penetrate within this middle of this bone over here. So as these blood vessels branch and penetrate here, what are they going to do? They're going to carry more cells, and also they're going to carry calcium. So these are going to form calcium around this area where all those blood vessels are. So as this inner part calcifies, what happens is this is called the primary ossification center. So this part is actually going, well, it still has blood vessels, but what's going to happen is that it's going to form a little pocket. It still has blood vessels, but we're just showing that now this bone is hollowing out. We still have blood vessels over here. But, so this is the primary ossification center, and this new space is what we call the medullary cavity. So that little pocket, and the whole structure itself is called a primary ossification center. Now what happens later is that these ends of this long bone over here in our example, they start getting blood vessels as well. So again, yet more evidence that bone, despite being left over, the matrix being left over when we die, is a living tissue. It has cells, it needs a blood supply. So what we have over here is that this part is going to start to get calcified, these ends over here, because you have all the cells, all the calcium, all the nutrients, and all the minerals being deposited here. And it's also going to form its own cavities as well. Oh, hello, erase. Okay, so as these pockets get bigger and this primary ossification gets bigger, what do you notice? Well, cartilage is being replaced by bone. And eventually what happens is that as cartilage is replaced by bone, we start to have only cartilage at the very ends of the bone, and a tiny bit of cartilage between the primary and secondary ossification centers. So again, this is why it's very important to have blood vessels and blood supply to bone, and bone tissue can die if there's some sort of trauma or break or something that interrupts the blood flow to a bone. Well, what's going to happen? All the cells that depend on that oxygen, nutrients, and everything else are going to die off. So yeah, this is why a very rough drawing of the process of endochondral ossification. So again, you start off with cartilage, but you eventually turn that cartilage into bone via sequential process. Is that where bone marrow forms? I will get to bone marrow, but yes, the bone marrow, this is why you need the space within the bone. You have other tissue within the bone as well.